How many church communities will be involved? I think when we originally started talking about opening the Pregnancy Care Center in Cody, we had a meeting, and I think there were 6 different church denominations present at that first meeting. So we had a good involvement across the board. Obviously, that helps maintain the longevity. You want to make sure that you can stay in business for more than just a year after you open the doors. So are you going to have the financial backing that's necessary? Number 3, location. What is the best spot in town? And I come to the people in Cody said they had a discussion about, do you have a medical clinic or a house? And they come to find out that people were seeming to feel more welcome coming into a house type setting rather than the formal medical clinic. But then they took it a step further and said, get new furniture. You know, people were willing to donate old furniture. He said, look professional, spend some money, get new furniture, make it inviting. So then, number 4, you go into staffing. The medical director, gentleman from Cody, told me, he said, he or she is the true hero, putting their license on the line for the center to be able to do ultrasounds. You can be non-medical and just counseling, but without the use of ultrasound, your efforts will not be as effective. Be medical from the beginning. And I think the statistics are bearing that out. The places where they are utilizing ultrasound, the statistics of the woman choosing to keep her baby goes into the 80s to the 90s percentile, very effective. But you need a medical director on hand to do that. And then the executive director, it's a person that plays a very key role. A lot of times they're the face of the Pregnancy Care Center out in the public. They're very instrumental in the fundraising efforts, so your executive director is key. Compassionate nurses, obviously a very vital role, and volunteers. Come to find out, in a lot of cases, the volunteer turnover is quite high. So, you know, looking at how do we nurture volunteers, how do we train them well to try and eliminate a little bit of the turnover rate is good. Number 5 is organizations. And Terry Winship last night when I was sitting at the banquet table, she said, are you going to mention the National Institute for Family and Life Advocates, NIFLA? And I said, well, yes, I am. She said, that organization is key, and that was the same thing that I heard from Cody and Powell. They really, they help you dot your I's and cross your T's. They really provide some good training. We have to recognize that this is a battleground for lives, not just a walk in the park. And when I was doing some of the research, you take the Planned Parenthood videos from Center for Medical Progress done undercover. I couldn't believe how many papers are on the internet from people, especially legal interns, studying for their law degrees or whatever, that have done undercover work against crisis pregnancy centers. Their papers are right online, and they talk about, oh, they're just so misleading, and on it goes. This is a battle for lives, and so there are people willing to infiltrate. They don't like us. We're effective, and they're against us. So, you know, they'll sue the Pregnancy Care Center, the board, anyone involved, and so we want to be doing it well. And that's so that we're prepared for that. And the organization, NIFLA, they help with the legalities and the paperwork, just a dynamic organization that is very helpful. Number 6, website construction. I had a phone call about 2 years ago from somebody that wanted to donate money to a pregnancy care center. And they had a particular town picked out that they would prefer, but they could not find the pro-life agency there. And I said, well, there is a pro-life agency, and I gave the name of it. And they said, oh, I pulled up their website, and I'm not sure they're pro-life. It's a pro-life website that is appealing to the abortion-minded woman. And so it was, if at first glance, you may not be able to say, wow, this is a pro-life place, but they were appealing to the abortion-minded women. They had intentionally established their website in that regard. I had a discussion with them afterwards. And so there are different methodologies of approach. And but anyway, the organization is very pro-life, and but they were really trying to target a particular audience of those abortion-minded women. So if you're going to start a pregnancy care center, what does your website look like? Number 7, advertising and hours of operation. Do you have enough money to have your doors open enough? And that's a challenge sometimes. But also, how is the community going to know you exist? And I was interested, I think it was the group in Rock Springs that I talked to. They said, well, we're going to put up flyers in bars, theaters, and the schools. The one for bars I hadn't thought of. But yeah, they are trying to go where the need might be. But anyway, so when you're thinking about structuring this, how many hours are you going to be open? How can you afford to pay the medical doctor, the executive director, nurses? How the financial support, once again, very key. And then some things that I hadn't thought of, but somebody said, look at the very specific needs of the facility. And I said, well, what are you talking about? And he said, well, like ultrasound needs to be done in a room without carpet. Okay, that was beyond my expertise of knowing that. But he said also like just the structure of being able to take and read pregnancy tests in a bathroom with controlled access. These types of very specific but practical matters. And so that's why if you're thinking about embarking on this endeavor, talk to somebody who's in the business already and make sure you take care of those details. One of the pregnancy care centers that I looked at online, they had an extensive list of what they did beyond the ultrasound and just giving that basic help right there at the beginning. They expanded their outreach. And now, that's not to say that all of us have to do that. There are different components of meeting the needs of people from different groups. But they just kind of walk through a few things here, and I just want to cover those. It says, take care of business. File the articles of incorporation as a nonprofit organization with an attorney and as a tax-exempt organization with the IRS. Okay, we want to do things right. Then it said, appoint a board of directors and a board president. The board will establish policies and procedures, approve a budget, appoint and evaluate the pregnancy care center director, monitor legal and financial matters, and set and approve your mission statement and goals. So all of that foundational work that needs to be done. Then, plan for physical needs. The Pregnancy Care Center offers the following to meet the client's physical needs. They may have a supply closet with maternity clothes, baby clothes, blankets, diapers, formula, baby powder, cribs, car seats, and on and on. I was telling someone, I believe it was Representative Wilson yesterday, the Pregnancy Care Center in Fort Collins, Colorado, because in Cheyenne, that's a lot of our clients from Cheyenne go to Fort Collins for an abortion. And so anyway, they have Alpha Center, a pregnancy care center, very near the abortion clinic in Fort Collins. And there are times, like especially during 40 Days for Life, a woman saw the prayer warriors and decided not to go into Planned Parenthood, kept her baby, but she needed financial help in regard to supplies and everything. They sent out an email, and within hours, those needs were all addressed. And they said, we may send out another email as other needs come up. And the response, because I was a little bit taken aback from somebody in my own denomination that once said, well, you guys aren't really pro-life, all you are is pro-birth, and then you don't care. I really took exception to that because I have seen people stepping up to the plate and go well above and beyond the call of duty to meet those physical needs of not only the baby, but the family overall. And that, so, what is it that we are equipped to do? Transportation volunteers. There have been some of the clinics where they transport clients to doctor's appointments, counseling sessions, or to important meetings. Obviously, if you're going to do something like this, you have to have the client sign a statement absolving the volunteer of any liability in case of accident and all that. That's where you need the legal help as well. Child care. Sometimes babysitters are arranged if a volunteer or client has no other alternative. Education, sometimes they offer classes in nutrition, childbirth, and breastfeeding. And so the range of what the Pregnancy Care Center chooses to do can be quite extensive. So, training the volunteers. One of the most things that kept popping up was the need for good training. And it said this one that seemed to be most extensive. It said the initial training should be done by an experienced director or by a crisis pregnancy specialist who has helped churches establish new pregnancy care centers. So they require counselors to attend 1 to 8 hours of classroom training, followed by 12 hours of observation and hands-on training in the center. This makes it show that we're serious about what we're doing. We're not just kind of slapping something together, but we're giving that training. Volunteer training content includes statistics on abortion, the scriptural basis for the sanctity of human life, overview of services to be offered by the center, training in faith sharing, crisis pregnancy counseling techniques, the mission statement and goals of the center, an overview of and commitment to confidentiality, roles of the director, the receptionist, counselor, and others, the correct documentation of files and logs and follow-up procedures. There are a lot of things that need to be in place when we do this. And finally, number 10, extenuating circumstances. Some of the pregnancy centers now are coming up with mobile units, basically taking the ultrasound to them. And I know in St. Louis, where I'm originally from, frequently they're parking that mobile unit just right up the street from where the abortion clinic is. And it's been quite effective, quite controversial, but quite effective. One of the other things that popped up in my research is some of the short-term housing needs. And this is related to human trafficking. So when we have women in crisis that just have nowhere to go and pulling them out of a bad situation, are we equipped to do that kind of thing? And finally, the last thing I want to touch on is the statement of faith. For legal purposes, the statement of faith needs to be strong. It impacts the hiring of personnel. It impacts everything of how it's done. However, one of the things that I have found a little bit difficult is I work from the Catholic perspective of with the Knights of Columbus purchasing ultrasound machines for pregnancy care centers. There is a program going on where the local Knights of Columbus raises half of the funds, and the Supreme Council out of New Haven, Connecticut matches those funds. And so we then buy an ultrasound machine for a pregnancy care center. One of the things that the Supreme Council asks for is if the statement of faith is in line with Catholic teaching, because they're putting out thousands of dollars for these. Most of the times, the basic principles of faith, I believe in God the Father, I believe in Jesus Christ the Son, I believe in the Holy Spirit, we can all agree on that. It's when the wording of the statement of faith starts to travel just a little bit more down into the weeds that we run into complications. So the strong statement of faith, but if we can make it one that the majority of the mainline denominations and evangelicals will be okay with, that is very helpful. Because when I sign my name to the Supreme Council of the Knights of Columbus, that there is nothing, doctrinally against what we stand for. I want to be able to do that in good conscience. So the Knights of Columbus have done a tremendous service. I think we are now up to 6 ultrasound machines that we have purchased in the state of Wyoming through the Knights of Columbus. And so that is a huge benefit from them. Yes?
Where are those? Where are those 6?
I think I've done the paperwork now for Cody, Powell, Sheridan, Gillette. I think they bought a new one here in Casper, if I recall correctly. Paperwork is done for Rock Springs. I don't know if it's been purchased yet because this is all a new venture. I think I might be missing one. But anyway, so it's been going on now for several years, and so we're making progress.
Could you read that?
The other thing I'd like to offer is just choose your name wisely. When first opened in Cody, it was the Crisis Pregnancy, whatever. It's now Serenity Pregnancy Resource Center. And it's just the same function, but the name is a lot more inviting, I think, than...
Gives me a little serenity.
It does. And it's like, you already know you're in crisis. You don't need to be reminded of that.
Yeah, and that is true. A name can be very helpful in that regard. Anything else? Did I get us back on time? I'm pretty close to having us back on time. All right.
That's a whole other story. Afterwards. Okay. Thank you, Vernon.
You're welcome.
Vernon is a dynamo,
I can't follow him.
so just draw a line in the sand, we're gonna start in a different way. Yeah. So we have, Vernon got us exactly on time again. Wow. So that means I have 10 minutes. And I just want to introduce to you a brand new direction that we can start thinking about. It reminds me very much of the Wyoming Pastors Network. How Becky said that when we called the family and asked for guidance on how to set this up, they said, "You're on your own. We've never done it before anywhere." The same thing is true about taking the crisis pregnancy centers to the next level. Much of what Vernon just told you about the services that would be helpful to offer to women in crisis pregnancy are follow-on services and resourcing. The centers themselves, the pregnancy resource centers themselves, are telling me that they've got all they can handle in shepherding these women through the pregnancy, and they are really looking for a systematized and loving way to hand off their care to another care facility to take care of their needs as young mothers. And so that's kind of the concept here I want to introduce you to, and I'll give you the, right now, in Wyoming, I believe it is the Gillette Center that is experimenting with a program which comes out of Texas called Embrace Grace. And I have some of their resources on the back table. You may feel free to pick up this is a starter guide for Embrace Grace that they sent to me. There's also other resources. I also had just one copy of the workbook. Embrace Grace is a program which is a 12-week program to wrap arms around a woman who is in a crisis pregnancy and to bring her into the church. Now, whether she eventually becomes a member or not, it's an evangelism opportunity, but of course there's no guarantees. But it is in time to proclaim to her very clearly that this may have been an accident from your perspective, but it was not an accident from God's. This child has a purpose, your life has a purpose, and God's word will guide you there. So it's a tremendous concept, tremendous concept. So I just want you to be thinking about one general thing. We have a number of crisis pregnancy centers around the state already, quite possibly already in your town. We have on the back table where Terry Winship was set up, she was representing all of the crisis pregnancy centers in the state. I contacted them all individually, and thank God they've got a network between themselves. They talk, and so they're not duplicating efforts. And they decided that they were going to ask Terry to come to our convention in order to represent all of them. On that table, there is a listing of addresses and contact information for all the crisis pregnancy centers in Wyoming, as well as Fort Collins, Colorado, and Billings, Montana, for portions of our state that might gravitate across the border. So I would encourage you to pick one of those up so that you would have the information to pass it along. If those run out, I made kind of a shortened copy of it that's also on the back table over there. I would simply want to encourage you, whether or not you have a crisis pregnancy center in your town, and whether or not you are able to go through the checkpoints that Deacon Dobleman just gave you and open up a new one. I want to encourage each and every church to contact the nearest crisis pregnancy center and ask them one question. How can we help?
Yay.
How can we help? And let them guide you. it will put you on a track where you are able to live out the gospel of life. Very similar to what Ryan was saying yesterday about living out marriage, we live out life. And as Deacon Dolan just mentioned to you, this one of the perennial and most frustrating arguments from the pro-choice perspective is, well, you're pro-embryo, but you're not pro-baby. And temperature level rises, and we know it's a total lie. But we have the goal. I have the goal of living out that pro-life perspective so thoroughly that the lie gets to be immediately exposed for the mean-spiritedness that it is. And we can always do better. We can always do better. Part of that is connecting with your crisis pregnancy center nearby and asking, how can we help? And let me just say then, to bring it to two more specifics. I already mentioned Embrace Grace. There's another program, and I wish that Terry was here because I cannot remember the name of it. Anybody from Casper who's familiar with Truth Care here? Is it Truth Care, Casper? Okay. I think the name of the program is Women's Care. But the Casper Center here is the only other center in the state that's dealing with that's trying to get something going in terms of the aftercare. And they're doing it by not Embrace Grace, but a different program, and they're working with a couple of different churches in Casper that are developing this program. One of the concepts of the Wyoming Pastors Network was that each church has a special way of thinking and doing things, and there's not a one-size-fits-all. So as we are developing programs to do this, your church is going to need to think specifically. There might be a program out there that you can just take off the shelf and use, but it might be that you'll have to develop it. Or let me say that a different way. It might be that you'll get to develop another one. And having developed another one, then share it with other congregations in your denomination across the nation, and this could take off like wildfire. So, from what Terry was telling me as we were waiting for our mashed potatoes last night, the one that she is working with is a kind of more elbow room, more flexible kind of program that gives more room for each church to develop it. And the advantages there are obvious. Embrace Grace, I have been working with them for the last month or so, trying to find out as much as I can about it. And the strong suit of Embrace Grace is that it is designed to be able to take it off the shelf and hand it to somebody with very little training and let them just use it and go. So it's very strong in that suit. The weak suit of it is it's a one-size-fits-all program, and you might not find it to be, the approach that they take might not fit with the way that your congregation does things. So have a look at both of them. If neither one suits you, make one of your own and share it. All right. I feel like we've been talking 100 miles an hour for a long time. Anything else that somebody wants to share about this particular topic about interacting with your local center? Any follow-on questions then about anything that I presented, more information that I could give you? Yes, sir.
The Embrace Grace, do you see that? I was just trying to think of the term, is like an adjunct to what they're doing? Sure.
Yeah, well, Embrace Grace it's written by a woman in Texas who herself, I believe, was connected with the church and found herself in a crisis pregnancy. And her basic premise is that the women in crisis pregnancies are ashamed and are not likely to reach out to the church, and so the church needs to reach out to them and embrace them in grace.
So it's an evangelistic tool.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is that. I was talking about some of the proprietary stuff and a way of speaking that might not be a Wyoming way. But, she talks about we need to love on women. I could just hear that with a good southern drawl. Love on them. But it's just a great way to begin. Yes.
Our Jewish rabbis who will commit to the 3 issues, welcome. Life, marriage, and religious freedom.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that we have been wrestling with, is that, and generally what we have decided, and you're just talking generally with the Wyoming Pastors Network now,
Right.
So I guess I have to preface what I'm going to say with, this is my opinion, this is not the opinion of the network, so I'm just going to talk off the cuff. But it seems to me that even though in principle, I could synchronize with the Atheists for Life, like I mentioned in my remarks yesterday. One of the things that may very well be the case, and I think very well is the case, is that if I would try that in any formal kind of way, it would undermine the things that we can do together. And basically my motto is, I'm not going to let the perfect be the enemy of the good. So I think short answer to the question, I think we find a different way to help them do their thing rather than envelop them in this group, because I think it would be disruptive. But I might be wrong about that, and we should talk with the whole group. The whole group needs to decide whether that would be disruptive or not.
Will you take responsibility to do that?
Would I take responsibility to talk with Jewish rabbis?
No, to talk to your group about Jewish
Yeah, we're in
rabbis.
constant dialogue about that. Yes, we are. Yeah. And frankly, we are in constant dialogue about all different possible denominations that could sign on to these 3 things, and whether it would be best to have a separate organization for them or not. And generally, by the way, that is happening. There is something, they don't have a name yet, but the LDS are organizing themselves separately.
The statement of faith stuff in the Manhattan Declaration is, very carefully laid out to discuss certain issues. Is that something that comes up that, you settled on that? It seemed pretty, like a pretty good position for me as somebody who's read it, but when I talk to others about the Manhattan Declaration, they don't know about it. As a resource to kind of look at those kinds of issues that this gentleman was just raising, or issues that can be contentious between the Roman Catholic Church and the Protestant Church and the Orthodox Church. But they've agreed on that between those 3 denominations.
Yeah.
Do you want to speak to the Manhattan Declaration at all, or encourage people to go read it and sign it online? Not that the signature really matters much, except it makes you think about those issues. What do you think?
Yeah. The Manhattan Declaration, I think, is just an outstanding document that lays out what we mean by sanctity of life, what we mean by sanctity of marriage, and what we mean by religious freedom. The Manhattan Declaration also does a pretty good job of offering some common across-the-board theology to undergird those 3 positions. There are a couple of prominent theologians that are respected more by some and less by others, who have objections to the Manhattan Declaration, not because of their stances on the 3 particular issues, but because they feel that they do not give enough. They don't give enough to the gospel of Jesus Christ and Him crucified for the salvation of the world. And I'm thinking specifically of, I think, John MacArthur, R.C. Sproul, are people who offer criticisms and advise people not to sign the Manhattan Declaration for those reasons. And it's for those reasons that the Wyoming Pastors Network, although we reference the Manhattan Declaration in regard to its bottom line on life, marriage, and religious freedom, we did not include a subscription line to it. I myself have subscribed to it, many have not. But the bottom line is, as long as you understand that this is where we're coming from in terms of these 3 issues, whether you subscribe to the Declaration or not is not a part of the WPN. But I would recommend, if you haven't read it yet, to go online, just Google in Manhattan Declaration, and it's a well-written document. Yes, sir.
Do you have a position on the statement calling for constitutional resistance from the American Principles Project?
Is that the new one by Robert C. George?
I don't know who the author is. Let me see if it's listed here. Well, he's one of the signatories, but I don't know whether he's the author. He's on the list here of about 60 signatories.
Okay, yeah. We don't have a position on that. I've read it and I like it, if that's the one I'm thinking about, this new thing that Brian was talking about yesterday. But
It's very legally oriented,
Yeah.
but very, very sound for this position
Yeah.
in terms of protecting.
Yeah.
Is
I
that the
agree.
guy
Traditional
from Georgetown?
But
Robert, is that the professor from Georgetown?
I think he's a professor at Princeton.
Princeton,
Yeah.
yeah, right, so,
Princeton,
yeah.
founder of American Princeton.
Okay.
He's the
Well,
founder
I'm
of the
gonna-
project, so maybe he's the author.
I'm going to cut things off here, not because I want to dialogue with you at the break, but I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to have a break, get a glass of water, and visit the bathroom if you need to, and then we'll come back here at 11 o'clock for Mr. Bill Twitchell. Very important stuff he's got to say. Okay. Thank you.